So the other night I was just trying to collect my thoughts now. I think I was in bed or something, and I like to give a lot of information. So the preamble to this basically is that I really like, the stars in space and all of that. I find it completely interesting and just insanely amazing how it all exists, and um, that all comes from my worldview. We all have a worldview and an understanding of how we would like to understand how the world exists and how the universe exists. Because it's vast. We have our galaxy, but there are many other galaxies out there. And up until recently, my thoughts have really only extended towards sort of the edge of our known galaxy, our orbital space, if you want to call it that, with our sun and our planets around it. And I've been starting to think about it further, starting to think, there's more to this, On CNN, I read, some people say hashtag fake news, but this is not fake news. It's just a report from NASA. And now other people are going to say NASA is also fake news, but, there is still some truth in NASA. Anyway, so they were talking about how they discovered these different, how can one say, solar systems. And so to put it in a short form, effectively, we've got the sun, and then we've got our, 8 planets, that are around it, and we orbit around the sun. So that's kind of our system. But then there are these other systems that exist out there. And in fact, what they found is they found 7 other systems that exist out there. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist and all that. This is all actually factual. I've actually read up on all these things. But my point really is, I started asking the question of, God says in Genesis 1 that He's created the heavens and the earth, or the heaven and the earth, whichever way you want to read it. But the point being that He created the vastness of it all. He created all of that. And based on my worldview, I know that Christ is the designer, that God is the designer of all things. But that worldview can sometimes come to question. You can question it yourself, because you can think, gosh, Lord, I mean, really? Have you really? It looks more like it's an experimental task. Because if you look at the different planets, you can, even just in our solar system, you can ask yourself, but Lord, Mercury, Saturn, Pluto, it's almost like the one is a little bit too hot, the one is too cold, the one is too small, kind of like you're experimenting. And when I asked him that, he told me, he just said Jupiter, and I was like, huh? So I went to go do a very brief, very mild, very light study of Jupiter. And but the key message that came out of it, that God revealed to me, was the perfection of how Jupiter is created. And if you know anything about Jupiter, it's a sort of, I think, 80 or 90% gas, and the rest, and 10% core. So imagine a sort of a round ball like this, and then everything around it to this distance is gas. But the way that gas exists around it is so perfect. It's almost weird. I mean, how can this gas that's around it be so perfect? And then God told me it was because He created it. And I was like, oh! And that kind of in my heart, I knew that, that is truth, and that God literally created these things, that it wasn't some experimental task, that He decided that He was going to create these things, that He made these things, and He made it in those shapes and forms and sizes because of His reasons. For example, Jupiter is known as the planet that absorbs, objects in space, preventing them from getting to Earth, for example. So that was sort of my sort of last kind of interaction with God about, the idea of space and, within our solar system. But then I started to move to the edge of solar system, which really brought me to the question of death, because I was thinking, well, we die, and I know that our souls, we don't die, our bodies die, but where do we go, and then it extended to the thought of, well, we go to hell or we go to heaven, and I'm like, but now where is heaven and where is hell? Surely it's physical places. And I know that there's a lot of studies about it that says, yes, it is physical places. And for me, it's really a thing I'm thinking about now, because I truly believe that there are physical places. In the Bible it says that there will be gnashing of teeth and blah, blah, blah for the people who are in hell. And I'm thinking to myself, well, and it's going to be a very hot place, and I'm thinking, well, damn, Gina, like she's, if it's going to be very hot there, you're going to feel it. It is not gnashing of teeth, and gnawing and gnashing of teeth. That's not a good place, but it's a planet. And then I thought, well, maybe it's a planet that's closer to the sun, and then it just so happens that one of the solar systems that NASA discovered recently, the stars are like very close, to its sun. But I mean, you can even look at our solar system, and you can look at, like, I think, it's not Pluto. What's the closest one? I think Mercury to the sun. The point being that, these are physical places. So it's possible, I'm starting to believe, and I'm just really, I'm investigating it, but I kind of already believe it, yeah. I'm investigating this idea that, what, God says there's a heaven and there's this perfect place where His people are going to live, this perfect earth. And I'm thinking, well, this earth was perfect in the beginning, and then we kind of screwed it up. But He's saying there's another perfect earth, which is even more perfect than this. And I'm saying, well, if He created this earth, which was so perfect in the beginning, why couldn't He have created another one? I mean, seriously, think about that. Why not? And why is it not then that He's saying that, well, when you die on this earth, depending on how you have lived here, in light of Him, you can go and live on this other earth. Sounds weird, sounds like God is like saying, oh, you put through a test. But yeah, it is kind of that, I believe. And it also led me to thinking about this whole article on CNN that I read about NASA, and I was asking myself, why is it so that we have such an uncanny search for beyond? Why do we want to go beyond the edge of our galaxy? And why are we not satisfied with what we have? Well, it's because, for one, we know that our Earth is becoming somewhat unsustainable to the human eye. Although I think that's questionable as well, because I think God sustains things. But we have this indelible idea that we just want to go further and find further. And I was thinking, how much further is God going to allow us to discover other planets, to the extent that we're able to fly there, in spaceships, and you think, wow, Andre, this is weird, you're starting to sound weird. But no, it's not really weird if you think about it, because many moons ago, there was a dude that created the light bulb, that's shining on my head right now. And that was almost an impossible feat, but he tried, I don't know, they say like 10,000 times, 10,000 failures or whatever, not failures, but 10,000 retries in order to get to success. And it's a similar kind of pursuit that we are busy with now. It's a pursuit to finding that thing that seems impossible, but that actually is not impossible, as long as God wants to truly reveal it to us, and as long as we persist. Because remember, one of the things we do have is the knowledge. We are able to pursue knowledge, and we are able to do that in succession over generations. And that is what's happening with our space theory, with our space talk. So the spiritual side to this, actually, I believe it's in parallel with the human side that we're experiencing, that in actual fact, what we are doing on earth is not so odd in terms of our seeking life beyond earth. It is not a strange desire. It is, in fact, I believe, a desire in line with how God has created things, and whether there is another planet out there that we're going to go live on, whether it be hell or earth, that's something to think about, because our souls definitely do not die. I don't believe that. I'm fully convinced we don't. It's not just an ending to everything, and it's so it leads me to think, well, surely we must then think about what are we going to do beyond this earth. So Christianity will tell you, have you thought about eternity? And I'm asking you actually practically, well, have you practically thought about eternity? Like, where are you going to live after you leave this earth? Like practically speaking. And for me, it's kind of interesting, I mean, how do we get there? Well, God will take us there in a split second, from this planet to another realm, another heavenly place, because the galaxies are vast. I mean, it's huge. So it's very exciting, actually. And I think the key to discovering this new place is by sticking close to the one who has created, the key discoverer, in fact. Yeah. So, like the Portuguese who, traversed the seas many years ago, looking for new lands. Wow. Now we are traversing the sea of space, because space is effectively a lot of water, so I believe, in a different form, in a gaseous form. So now we are traversing the sea of space to go and find new lands, and the question of how far we get really is about how far over the edge we want to be willing to go, trusting in God to take us there. Those are my thoughts. You might think I'm completely crazy now, or you might find some truth in that. God bless you.